We all know that stress is bad for us, and chronic stress can cause negative health effects on your mood, immune and digestive systems, and cardiovascular health. A pioneer in the field of neuroscience, Dr. Gerlinde Metz has been recognized universally as a researcher and professor at the University of Lethbridge. She joins me today to discuss her work on the correlation between environmental factors like stress and their impacts on the body. Dr. Metz, thank you for your time today. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Hello, Naveen. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great, and it's great to be here. So can you just tell us a little bit about your research, which is exploring the relationship between stress and life experiences and brain plasticity?
Yeah, like you mentioned, stress is a really wide field of research. You can study pretty much any aspect related to lifestyle and health and medical sciences. And so it's been really fun for us to explore a wider area of stress and how chronic and acute stress affects our day-to-day functioning and behavior and mental health and also physical health, as a matter of fact. And so we've been venturing out into many areas now, moving from experimental basic studies into working with vulnerable human individuals and families affected by natural disaster and war and migration. And we've also been working with astronauts and athletes and various other parts or individuals in our population that are affected by the effects of chronic and toxic stress too.
So what made you want to delve into this industry and what's been the outcome so far?
So we've been realizing that stress really functions as in a dose-dependent curve, I would say, because you have low levels of stress that can enhance our performance. Then you've got positive outcomes in relation to stress. But when stress becomes longer lasting or severe, or we have cumulative effects of stress that come at repeated times during our lifetime or even in previous generations, they can actually have some adverse effects. That means cause some negative health outcomes. And we're really trying to understand what's the best dose of stress versus the negative dose of stress. And that's been a lot of fun to explore, but it's also a very challenging field.
Now, how do you approach studying complex issues like these? Like, are there certain methodologies or techniques that you use?
Well, at the Canadian Centre for Behavioral Neuroscience, we're really interested in behavioral neuroscience and neurobiology. So we're using behavior as an integrative outcome of everything that happens inside the brain and inside the body to reflect well-being at the more holistic level. So we're not only looking at the brain, but we're also looking at the interactions of the brain with the rest of the body, and also how the rest of the body, like function of organs, like kidney and liver and heart and the gut, affect the function of the brain as well. So it's a big field, but it's been really great to work together with a fantastic team of trainees and collaborators on these projects.
And what are some of your key findings regarding stress and brain plasticity?
So we've been looking at various different populations, ranging from astronauts to families, mothers and children, and also animal models. And we've seen that stress can actually enhance performance. Especially acute stress can make us thrive and deal better with an emergency
So are you talking
situation.
about like good stress versus bad stress?
This is the effect of good stress, that's right. We're talking about emergency situations, and we talk about the fight or flight response that make us thrive in the face of an acute stressor or an acute emergency situation. And we can perform better. We can do better on tests, we can do better in oral presentations, we can fight a fire better or run away from an emergency situation. So this is very helpful, and this goes along with adjustments inside of the brain. And it can enhance performance, like certain neurotransmitters coming on board, hormones coming on board that make us do very well in those situations. So we should trust our stress response in those situations because it's been evolved over millions of years, really, that we come to be here. And so that we have a really great set, a mindset and a physical set of abilities to deal with stress really well.
So you're talking about some real world applications here, like working with fire and EMS. You also mentioned astronauts, which is really interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Like, what kind of work are you doing with astronauts, and how is your research helping to affect people's lives in a positive way?
Yeah, so for wonderful collaborations with people here, colleagues and trainees at the University of Lethbridge, and nationally and internationally, we've been able to expand our research program, and we were also asked to participate in a study with NASA, and they have been very generous in sharing resources with us that are very precious. We have access to samples from NASA astronauts who spent an extended period of time on the International Space Station, up to 6 months, and we had compared how male and female astronauts adapt to being in space versus also coming back to Earth. And these studies are really important because right now we read and hear a lot about long duration space flight and exploration of Mars. We do have the Artemis project coming on where astronauts are flying around the moon. This is a long period to spend in space. And we want to understand how space travel and the stress associated with space travel affect our health and affect potentially future of human populations who want to explore space more.
Now, I'm more interested in you now. What inspired you to get into this field of study? Was it like an influential person or some events, something that you saw on TV, a book you read? Like, what's the story behind you?
That's a great question, because for me, my interest in neuroscience in general and behavioral neuroscience in particular goes back to me being 4 or 5 years old, because I wanted to work with animals and I wanted to understand their behavior and I wanted to understand what changes their behavior. And then I got probably influenced a little bit by the classic ethologists like Konrad Lorenz, who published about imprinting of gray geese, and I've done that with chickens and replicated some of his work during school times. And then I really, this idea of working with animals, working with them closely, one-on-one, and getting to know them and understanding where their behavior comes from, how they respond to the environment, how they interact, that stuck with me throughout my career. But of course, we don't do much good if we just study animal behavior and don't help individuals in our community. So we really make sure that we are translating our research and that we are really learning about mechanisms from animals, but we translate and bring that into the clinical world so that we can ultimately help individuals, help our community, give back to the community, and help vulnerable individuals in our community with our research. And this is really what motivates us to do what we do every day.
So let's talk about the influence of pop culture and is it creating an interest in neuroscience? Because we were talking before the interview about one show, The Big Bang Theory, where one of the characters, the woman who played Dr. Amy Farrah Fowler as a neuroscientist, she's a neuroscientist in real life. So has shows like that affected people's thinking and interest in the field of neuroscience?
Well, I think there's definitely an increase in interest in sciences in general, motivating young fellows to participate in STEM research, STEM fields. But also neuroscience, of course, is always a hot topic. It's one of the fastest developing sciences that we have because the progress goes rapid. It's so highly relevant to our life and health that we understand the wellness of the brain, what makes us have healthy brains, how do we support mental health especially is very close to current discussions in the media. So there has been an increase of interest in neurosciences through pop culture series, through also media and news pieces, but also I think the pandemic brought home our reliance on brain health and mental well-being, how important mental well-being is to maintaining a healthy body as well.
You're a prominent figure in the field of neuroscience. What advice would you have for aspiring young people that want to enter this field?
I would first of all say follow your passion. Do what you love. Do what makes you enthusiastic about something. Follow your intuition too. And if you do what you love and if you really enjoy what you're doing, you will be able to thrive in whatever field it is. I can of course advertise for the STEM fields, that's natural sciences and engineering and mathematics, because these are fields where there's so much future. The development is so rapid right now that we have so much progress with machine learning, artificial intelligence, with new algorithms that help us extract major data pieces from data that are generated at hospitals, for example, to learn about what causes diseases, how can we treat diseases better, to learn about personalized medicine or precision medicine. These are applications, and this is not really one field. Neuroscience and medicine are drawing knowledge from all STEM, from all natural sciences, from engineering, from mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, of course psychology, and so many other sciences that are working together to solve a question together. They get around a table and they discuss from their various perspectives how they can solve a problem. And this is so interesting and so motivating in neuroscience, especially because we do that on an ongoing basis, that we collaborate with other disciplines, we have interdisciplinary teams, and we're getting together to solve a problem together with combined forces. And of course, the big piece is more than the addition of the individuals. So it's really fun to engage in these collaborations, and that's how we get involved in collaborations around the world, because we have physicians who are doing psychotherapy sending us their samples. We work with indigenous populations who collect data and send them to Lethbridge. We have our NASA collaborators who send us data from astronauts or from families who are affected by a flood or by an ice storm in Australia or in Canada, respectively, and so on. So we get samples and data sent to us from all over the world, and we're analyzing them here, and we're working with our collaborators and partners to analyze them and interpret the findings to give back to those communities, not only close to home, but also around the globe, so that we can solve problems and learn about ways how we can do better, how we can build resilience, how we can fight stress and cope with stress.
Now, I need a bit of advice from you, because every week I put together a weekly report to my superiors on what I've done all week. And sometimes it can be so challenging just to remember, what all did I do this week? And I know it's a lot of stuff, and because my schedule is always full, but when I'm putting up my weekly report, I can remember one or two things, and then it looks like I've done literally nothing all week to my boss, because there's just not a lot to it. So what advice would you have, or what advice would you give to the average person that wants to improve things like their memory or their focus?
Well, in a nutshell, I would say use it as much as you can. So it's good. There are a lot of programs for cognitive training, but I would say if you focus on one program for training, you're training this ability. You're not training other abilities at the same time. I would say get engaged with new activities. Never stop learning something new. Keep learning languages, keep traveling, keep engaging with your friends and family. Go out of the house and do something. Get your body exercised, do various different activities as much as you can to enrich your brain, because we talk about environmental enrichment, and we've seen that this is the best strategy to stay healthy across the board. We have seen that enrichment in the environment, doing many different physical and sensory activation or sensory stimulation activities will help keep the brain fit. It will help also to heal the brain after an injury. So get engaged with many different activities. Challenge your brain, challenge your body with a few non-dangerous activities, but aerobic exercise has been proven, for example, to help generate new neurons and grow new synapses, but also cognitive activities and social connectedness are doing the same. They're growing new connections in the brain as we speak, even as we interact here on screen. And it's very important to get out into the community and get involved in something that is fun. It's most important to do something that makes you happy, that engages you, that inspires you in many ways.
Dr. Gerlinde Metz is a researcher and professor at the University of Lethbridge in the field of neuroscience. Dr. Metz, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be talking with you today.
Absolutely. I'm Naveen Day on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.